Welcome back to our final installment of our overview of Miami University's doctoral program in clinical psychology. So for this last part, we'll talk about sort of our admissions timeline, some of the financial aspects of being a graduate student here at Miami, and also talk about some of the outcomes for our alums. So we'll start with sort of finances here. 100% of students who are admitted are supported for 5 years. That is guaranteed assuming that students are in good standing. What this means is that all students receive a tuition waiver, and this includes in and out of state tuition. This does not include some fees, and you can look at our website to see what those fees are and more specifics. They estimate out to about $1,000 per semester with everything involved. The graduate assistantship does pay a 9-month stipend. It will be at least $17,100 for 20 hours per week. That may go up slightly depending on budget models for next year. Now, our students also receive a $1,800 summer stipend. I will mention that this is currently under review at our graduate school level. I think we're trying to figure out ways to reallocate some of that money. So there is no guarantee that that summer stipend will be there, but we are pretty hopeful for that. How the assistantship works. So in our department, we call these graduate assistantships. Other places you might hear the term teaching assistant or research assistant. For us, we actually kind of combine those two together into one graduate assistantship title. So in your first and second year, you'll serve as a graduate assistant. What this means is that typically in your first year, you're assigned to your primary research mentor, and you'll assist that mentor in their teaching and research duties. In year 2, you may be assigned to a whole host of different kinds of graduate activities. So you might be working with your current research mentor. You might be working with another one of our faculty members, assisting them on their teaching or research. Potentially someone might have grant dollars that you might be funded on in that second year. A lot of our second year students also help to teach the lab sections of our stats and research methods courses as well. In third and fourth year, your assistantship comes from those external clinical placements, what we call traineeships. And in your fifth year, you may either choose to be the instructor of record. We have one spot, which is our doctoral associate. We have another couple of spots which could go to external clinical practicum sites, or you might be working as a research assistant for someone's grant if they had grant money in that year. There's also a number of different awards that can help pay for some of the time that you're here. So we have what's called the Dissertation Fellowship in the fifth year, which goes to one student, and that funds their time to work on that project. We also have the Graduate Student Support Awards, which go to high-performing students in order to cover 1 year of their work. So the take-home message from this is that at this point, although we are a state institution, and so this is always needing to be approved by the state, but so far we haven't had any problems, is that all students are supported for a guaranteed 5 years, assuming they're making timely progress in the program. And that includes a tuition waiver and stipend for those 5 years. I wanted to talk a little bit more about the community within the clinical area. So each week we have Case Conference. Although it sounds like it's purely clinical, this is a meeting of all the clinical students and faculty to discuss, yes, cases that we see in our clinic, but also to have research talks, professional development talks, outside speakers, other faculty from our department not in clinical come and talk. So this is our sort of brown bag, if you will, for our clinical area. This happens each semester, and students attend all 5 years that they're on campus in the program. You'll hear more about these other opportunities as well in some of the other pieces of our virtual interview day, but we do have a diversity and inclusion committee. This is a committee made up of students and faculty who are dedicated towards improving the diversity of our department, making sure that we are attending to issues of inclusion and equity to make our community a more welcoming and inclusive space. There are other research groups that that you might be involved in. These are sort of reading groups that include focus on things like culture, gender, emotion reading group. So these are kind of more informal groups where people may do journal article readings and discussions, or workshop different ideas that they have. Now, obviously, a lot of this work during the pandemic has all been virtual, including our CASE conference, but we're really looking forward to getting back in person in the fall. If you go beyond the clinical area, we have a graduate student association on campus, as well as some specific associations that are dedicated to supporting students with certain visible identities, social identities. So we have the Graduate Students of Color Association, the Latin American Graduate Student Association, and the Haven for students who identify as LGBTIQ students, as well as allies there. So these are groups that a lot of our students are involved with to provide even more support for students who may come from different backgrounds or have different identities on campus. So I want to talk beyond our program. What happens to our alums? I think honestly, this is a question that if you're not getting information about at any program, you should really be asking, because this is the proof of what kind of training occurs for individuals. So our program prides itself on being pretty generalist. We're not just kind of training for a specific career, and you can see that in these data that I'm presenting here. So I'm presenting data from the 5-year period for our graduates who graduated between 2013 and 2018, and I would say that our data are actually probably even more similar to this with respect to the number of our students working in hospitals at this point. Obviously, a lot of folks who graduated recently are on postdocs, and so it still remains to be seen what their ultimate career outcomes will be. But you can see from this pie chart that most of our students are actually ending up in hospital settings. Now, this may be VA hospitals, this may be academic medical centers, it may be private psychiatric hospitals, but they're primarily doing work in hospitals. Some are in purely clinical positions within those hospital settings, others are actually in more research opportunities in those settings, and we have many folks who are doing a mix of those activities in those settings. Then you can see that we've got a few of our folks who have gone on to what might be thought of as traditional academic teaching roles. I would say we have a very small number of folks who are in independent practice. Otherwise, they're working in community mental health settings, university counseling settings, HMOs, or other kinds of institutions. Some of our folks who work with Dr. Flaspole in particular working in things like school districts. That may be things that are captured by others. Now, I will say that if you look at this chart, how things might be changing or evolving over time, that 20% that you see in university counseling centers is probably decreasing, whereas that 50% that you're seeing in hospital-based settings is increasing. As some examples, here are a few of our recent graduates in the last 7 years or so, and you can see that they're working in a variety of different places. Dr. Raj is she may actually be, I might have gone up to her associate professor at Xavier University down in Cincinnati, so a traditional academic role. Folks work like Dr. Suchi Daga, who's working in a VA medical center. One of my former students, Lauren Fussner, is a pediatric psychologist working at CHOP in Philly. We have Dr. Joe Molitor, who is a practicing psychologist in a community-based setting, Rural Psychological Services, and Dr. Strack is a staff psychologist at a student counseling service. So you can see that sort of pie chart come to life with some of our different graduates here. As I mentioned, we don't see as many of our folks going into something like private practice or independent practice. We're seeing individuals who are doing a mix of different clinical, administrative, and research activities and training as well, a lot of supervision in primarily hospital and community-based settings. So that pretty much wraps up the overview. I wanted to give folks a little bit of what to expect from our admissions process here. So for our class of 2021, we expect a class of probably about 5 to 6 students. Admission is to the program. Obviously, we have these kind of sub-tracks, but you're not admitted to one or the other tracks. And in fact, we've had students switch tracks. We've had students who say, oh, you know what, I'm actually interested in working with adolescents. And so they take some of the coursework in child and family-focused interventions, and they may do some practica that way, even though they work with a mentor who is maybe more adult-focused. We did see an uptick in our applications received this year, so I give this number just so you can feel good about yourself. So we certainly got a lot of great applicants, yourselves included, about 250, and we're interviewing about 35 individuals for our expected class. As you know, our interview dates are the 19th and the 22nd of January. We'll be meeting as a faculty on the 27th to discuss admissions. Then there's some behind the scenes work that happens, which usually takes about 1 to 2 weeks for administrative things before we can make actual offers of admissions. My hope would be, although there's no guarantee, but my hope would certainly be that folks will be hearing from us either with offers of admission or in terms of a wait list by February 15th. We adhere to COGDOP, which is the Council of Graduate Directors of Psychology, or Graduate Programs of Psychology. We are asking all of our applicants to make their decisions at least by April 15th. I will say as well that this is a very competitive process and a very competitive year, so we do ask that our folks not hold offers and not hold multiple offers for a long period of time. So, if you know that Miami is not the right fit and you have another offer which is a better fit, please let us know so that we can move on to our next applicant if you were to receive an offer. But of course, take the time that you need to make these decisions, and be sure to reach out if there are any questions that you have after the fact to see if there are other things that we can answer to help make your decisions in that way. But certainly, we have a pool that we would like to jump back into if the folks that we make offers to initially choose someplace else for their graduate education. Alright, so that wraps up my part of the videos, and we really hope that this was informative and gives you some overview of our program, and we also hope that we're able to see you at Miami this fall, and if all things go well, certainly in full person for that training. Take care. Thanks a lot.